Force to go around.
What's going on, my beautiful DC brothers and sisters? It's your boy, the Truth 31. Hit like, subscribe for all that DC goodness on their face, neck, and chest. And shout out to my boy, Renan Christian, for always keeping me up to date with all the DC news. And Zack Snyder recently made news saying basically what we all know is going to happen. Justice League is going to be kick-ass. It's going to be awesome. And you're really going to dig the tone that he's going for, because we all know it's going to be rated R. And this is a video on why I think DC, for the most part, more than any other comic book company, excels. It's at best when it's rated R dark material.
You're goddamn right.
Because if you look at DC's history when it comes to comics and when it comes to animation, they really just adhere to really darker material. Like that's why I'm so drawn to DC, because DC really excels at being darker, grittier, more than Marvel and more than any other, indie comic book company. Because especially with iconic figures like Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, and the Justice League in general, you really don't see that with Avengers. Like, you don't see a rated R Avengers movie, because it wouldn't work, and it doesn't work. But for whatever reason, there's something special about DC Comics that you can make a rated R Justice League movie or a rated R animation, or just like really draw and tell compelling dark stories in comic book form, and it works. It works. And I think that's what makes it special. Like, look at The Killing Joke. The Killing Joke, arguably one of the best graphic novels of all time, and it tells the quote-unquote Joker origin story, and there's some really dark, disturbing stuff in it. I mean, the iconic scene is where Joker shoots Barbara Gordon and practically like rapes her, and shows it, and kidnaps her father, kidnaps Jim Gordon, and makes him go insane by showing his daughter being like raped and brutalized and shot and all bloodied up. And you would never see that in a Marvel comic book or a movie anywhere. But for DC, DC's not afraid to go there. Like, DC's not afraid to really show some really dark, edgy stuff. I mean, if the fact that that comic was mainstream and everyone was able to read it, that just goes to show, like, wow, like DC is never afraid to really go there. And that's why I love DC, because they're not afraid to push the envelope. And that's why I love Zack Snyder. Like, Zack Snyder is not afraid to push the envelope with these characters, because the comics have done it. There's precedent here. Like, Zack Snyder is not the first one to introduce a dark, edgy superhero story. The comics have been doing it for 80 plus years. Like, this is nothing new. So the fact that he gets criticized for this is nonsense. Because if you're going to criticize Zack Snyder, then you might as well criticize Alan Moore. You might as well criticize all the comic writers and creators who have been telling dark stories in comic books. The best story right now, in my opinion, is Deceased, written by Tom Taylor. It's one of the darkest DC stories that you will ever read in your entire life. And it's dark, it's gritty, it's violent as all hell. And I mean, there are panels in this book where you're like, I can't believe this was published. Like, you know what I mean? You're like, how the hell is this mainstream? Like, and it's popular. It's one of the most popular DC books out right now. I mean, this panel alone, if Zack Snyder did this, if he shot this in his movie, I mean, people would be freaking out. Like, people would be calling for his head. But it's like, no, this is established in comic books. It's like nothing Zack Snyder did in Man of Steel, BVS, or the upcoming Justice League film is going to compare to anything that you read or see in Tom Taylor's Deceased. I mean, it is over the top gore, and I love it because, again, it pushes the envelope. It tells a great story with some great visuals, with some great panels, and the art is fantastic. And you care about these characters getting like their heads exploded, their bodies exploded. I mean, the fact that Superman runs into Flash and explodes his entire body because he's infected by the anti-life equation. Like, I don't want to ruin it because I want you guys to read it, but it's a really compelling story. But it's just amazing. Another example is the Injustice series, again, written by Tom Taylor. If you haven't read that, I highly recommend it because it tells the story of an evil Superman, a dictatorship run by Superman. And it shows how Superman can turn evil. Obviously, we get like parallels and homages to a BVS where we see a dictator-like Superman, who is succumbed to the anti-life equation. So, but I'm sure Zack Snyder took elements from Injustice and applied it to his film. But this, I mean, this is dark, and there's also scenes where Wonder Woman is killing everybody. Like she cuts off Mara's head in the Flashpoint, great book and great animated movie, and she kills Maxwell Lord. She snaps his neck. So there's some really there's a dark history to DC, and that's why I love it, because it doesn't feel forced. It feels natural. Like DC is just naturally dark. It's naturally geared towards adults, which is why, again, so many people are drawn to DC. Like DC has always been the more mature comic line. Like DC Comics has always been like the mature comic book publishers, just like the animated movies.
Shazam was wounded, but Cyborg helped him escape. Barry and Hal fought hard, but were taken down. The rest of us didn't last much longer.
So brutal, right? Again, I'm not a fan of that animated movie in particular, but again, it just goes to show that there has been a rated R Justice League film. Like there's been precedents to a rated R Justice League film. So the fact that people are freaking out over Zack Snyder's Justice League film being rated R, like why? Like you just saw a rated R Justice League film. Have you read any comics? Have you read any DC comics? I just mentioned Injustice and Deceased. Those two, like, make BVS and Man of Steel look like Teletubbies. It looks like those books make that movie look like a Power Ranger show, because it's dark, it's serious, it's mature, and that's why I love it. So Zack Snyder, like I said, is not doing anything new. In fact, he's honoring the source material, because he reads the source material. He understands he understands the comic book language. He understands comic book history. Like this is nothing new, and that's why so many people love him, because he respects the source material. Unlike some of the directors who really don't pay attention to it or don't really understand the comic book language at all, or how comic book works, but Zack Snyder does, and that's why so many people love him, and that's why I love him, because he homages so many comic books from like the Frank Miller days to like the early 40s, the 50s, the 60s, whether it's Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, or like the old Justice League comic, or like the old Justice League comics. He loves it. And there's like so many rich parallels to his comic books, and that's why that's why he has such a strong fan base, and that's why he understands what these comic book characters mean to us, and he understands their iconography, and that's why, like, again, we rock with him, because like every time you watch a movie of his, you always catch a glimpse of, like, oh, wait a minute, I think that's from this issue, or if Zack Snyder parallels a scene from the comics, a hardcore comic book fan would recognize it immediately. It's like, oh shit, like that's from issue blah blah blah. Oh, this scene that Zack Snyder filmed, I think this looks like what happened in issue number 45 with Justice League and stuff like that. And it's cool, it's awesome, and I love it. Because he's a nerd. Like, we're all nerds of this. We all love this. We all respect this, and that's why I think that's why he's so respected among the comic book community, because he understands what these comic book characters mean to us. He understands their, like I said, their importance to the culture and to America. Because don't get it twisted, DC characters are really, they're part of American history. Like everyone around the world, around the country knows Superman. They know Batman, and they know Wonder Woman. These are the most recognizable characters of all time, and that's why it said Zack Snyder uses his imagery to really showcase the importance of these characters, and show how important they are to not just the culture, but I mean, this might sound cheesy, but to the world, because these characters mean so much to everyone around the world. That's why DC really stands apart from everybody else because no other company has a Superman. They don't have a Batman. They don't have a Wonder Woman. These characters are iconic for a reason. And that's why they work. And that's why they can really just, I don't want to say like evolve, but you can't really break them. Like you can't really like damage them, which is why like so many people complain about Batman killing. But of course, if you're a comic book aficionado, you understand Batman has killed. Like this panel right here, Batman hangs a guy from his fucking bat plane, for God's sakes. So what are you talking about? All the people complaining about, Batman killing, for Ben Affleck killing especially, specifically. It's like, first of all, Batman has been killing in live action films for over 30 years. So that's one. And number two, have you not read anything from the 30s and the 40s? Batman is hardcore, bro. Like he puts Punisher to shame. He killed criminals like at random, like they were nothing. And I loved it. It was awesome. And this is the time where Batman was wearing purple gloves and shit, which is cool. But again, like if you don't have a problem with that, then you shouldn't have a problem with Ben Affleck killing or Michael Keaton or Val Kilmer or George Clooney or Christian Bale at all, because Batman has been killing for decades upon decades upon decades. Like you need to get over this stuff. Like it's not that serious. It's not that important. So hopefully people just move on from this because it's silly. It's nonsensical. Like stop complaining about something that's been established since the 1930s, for God's sakes. Like this is again, this is why I say this all the time. You cannot ruin these DC characters. Like Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. Like these characters are so adaptable because like you can't really, because they're so iconic that you can't ruin them. No matter what you do with them, no matter what, like you can do the most stupidest shit to them ever, and you won't ruin it. Why? Because some other writer or some other creator will take the character and do something new with it, do something unique with it. They're adaptable for a reason. Like there's a reason why these characters have been around since the 1930s and 1940s and 1950s, because every generation a new comic book writer, a new comic book artist would take these characters and do something new with them, do something that you've never seen before, and that comes and I'm speaking in terms of comic books and films. Like these characters, again, they have to evolve. They have to evolve, but keep the same essence of what makes them iconic, is what I'm trying to say. Like again, this goes for like the Batman, Superman, and this goes for Watchmen, the Alan Moore graphic novel Watchmen, which is a fantastic book and a fantastic film, and that is one of the most deepest, complex philosophical books that you will ever read. And again, you will never find that in a Marvel book, but you will find that in a DC book, because this is where DC excels. DC has always been more sophisticated, in my opinion, than Marvel or anybody else. And that's what DC really excels at. It's not dark for the sake of being dark. It's just naturally dark. It's naturally adult. And that's why I love it. And that's why DC really excels at it. But anyway, those are my thoughts. Smash that like button, my beautiful DC brothers and sisters. Subscribe. Hit me up on Twitter, Instagram. Let's continue having a DC conversation as always. Support DC. Love DC. What do you think? Are you a fan of the more darker DC books? Like, for example, Batman Damned. If you haven't read that graphic novel, read it, because it's awesome. So, or do you not agree with me? Do you think DC should be lighter? Do you think DC just not as good when it's darker, and Zack Snyder ruined it all? Do you have that opinion? Let me know in the comments down below, because I think DC is the best. I think DC is the best when it's darker and when it stays true to itself. My opinion. But as always, truth out. Love you all.